Okay, sorry, I speed up several weeks, and this is the month of August, so I'll be doing Troubles in the Amazon. And this is a redo, because I was a little noisy on the first attempt, and this is the redo I will be doing for this Nike. That part is gonna be so funny. Ace awoke to the sound of Zoro snoring loudly at the bottom of his bed. Before he could rouse himself, he became aware of a fragrant smell that immediately made him jolt upright. It smelled like a lovely perfume, or like someone nearby was making the best cupcakes in the world. Wondering what it could be, Ace looked out of the window, but the streets were empty. Then he opened his bedroom door and peered down the stairs to see if his mother was cooking something yummy for his breakfast. But the house was as quiet as a mouse. Feeling a bit silly, he scoured under the bed to see if Zoro had brought something in from outside, but there was no sign to what could be causing the wonderful aroma. How odd, he muttered to himself as he slid back under the covers to prepare for the busy day ahead. It's almost time, cried Isha as she met Ace outside the Bow City Museum later that morning. The museum was bursting with activity. Each year it held a huge celebration of an exotic and exciting place. And this year the people of Bow City were being treated to a journey to the Amazon jungle in Brazil. Isha had been reading up on the rainforest at the reading helix for weeks, and Ace was equally excited to see all the wild and wacky plants and creatures of the Amazon. Everyone was rushing around and carrying huge boxes trying to get their displays ready for the next day's opening extravaganza. Ace and Isha had promised to help Professor Bard bring his pieces for the display up the museum storeroom. Let's go and give the professor a hand then, Ace suggested as the parrot headed towards his office. Hello there, my jungle buddies, called Xena to the pair as they arrived at Professor Bard's office. Now who's ready for a Brazilian adventure? We are, laughed Ace. I wanted to ask you something first, though. This morning, I was woken up by beautiful fragrance. I couldn't find where it was coming from. Do you know what could have been? Well, began the professor, nowhere else on this earth has a beautiful collection of plants and animals as the Amazon rainforest. It's like the smell was one of the exotic plants here in the museum for exhibition. But there's one flower that's particularly precious, he continued. The Zevi is the sweetest smelling flower in the world. The Zevi is the sweetest smelling flower. It can be found in the Amazon forest, and I have one here. Would you like to see it? Professor Bard returned suddenly from his closet with a small wooden box. It was intricately engraved with beautiful flowers, and the professor set the trinket down on his desk very carefully before brushing off a thin layer of dust. Wow, what a beautiful box, smiled Isha. Just wait until you see what's inside, the professor enthused. I've been keeping the flower safe for weeks in here, away from the sunlight, and I'm happy finally to show it to you. It will be the talk of the exhibition. The professor opened his desk drawer and took out a small key to open the box. But as he reached for the lock, he discovered that it had been broken and that the unlocked box was empty inside. The flower has gone, said Professor Bard alarmingly. How will we be able to replace it by tomorrow? Don't panic, asserted Xena. I've been using satellites deep in the Amazon rainforest to chart the growth of the Zevi. She led Ace and Isha over to a huge computer screen displaying a map of the jungle. This is Blossom Gorge, the only place in the world where the Zevi grows freely, she explained, pointing toward a section of the map. Each of these little pink dots represents one Zevi flower. Why are the dots disappearing? Asked Isha. She was right. The pink dots representing the Zevi flowers were disappearing before their eyes. Xena then quickly typed a a few bit of code in the computer. Oh dear, this is not good. According to the computer, the flowers have to fully disappear, and 94 will have fully disappeared in 29 hours and 14 minutes. I am up for the challenge, claimed Ace. I wonder if the disappearing Zeebies are related to one that was gone missing for the museum. Before long, Ace and Isha were joined by the other Zeleros. Ace excitedly informed them of one of the Amazon adventure before Professor Bart offered a warning to the group. The rainforest is a beautiful place, he informed wisely. But it's also dangerous. You cannot eat or drink anything in case it's harmful, and there are many plants and animals that can harm you if you touch them. You must be extremely careful, he warned. We promise, they replied, whilst Zora wagged his tail in delight. We used the satellite tracking system to direct you to Blossom Gorge and the Zeevee flowers, explained Xena. Just remember to check your watch's regularly. Off you go, then, said Professor Bart as the group gathered together. And good luck. 4 points of the earth, moon and sun, unite together and become as one. And off to the Amazon jungle we go! They cried in unison. The Zeleros landed in the rainforest with a thud. Just then they were surrounded by lush green trees, sprawling as far as the eye could see. Beautifully colored butterflies and birds fluttered around the exotic flowers hidden amongst the grass, and next to them was a sparkling blue stream glittered in the hot sun. Wow, look at how tall these trees are, gasped Molly as she straightened herself up and looked around. Giggling gumballs! What an unusual bird! Shrieked Lottie, pointing to a striking black and white bird with a huge orange beak standing amongst the tall grass. That's a toucan, replied Ace as he stood up and walked over to the majestic bird. And look how friendly he is, he laughed, stroking his soft coat. The Zeleros watched their computer watches flash, and Xena's smiling face filled the screen. Great, you made it, she began. Now we use the Rainforest satellite system to calculate the easiest route to Blossom Gorge. Simply follow the red arrows I've loaded onto the tracking system and they'll lead you straight to the Zeevee flowers. I'll be watching you, and remember, be careful. Xena's face was replaced by a map of the rainforest with the line of red arrows running through the center. Wow, this exhibition is going to be much easier than we thought. Thanks to Xena, laughed Molly, running forward at the lightning speed into the jungle. Wait for us! The Zeleros cried as they chased Molly through the trees. As Lottie moved through the trees with the other Zeleros, she felt something following her. She stopped in her tracks before turning on slowly. What if a scary insect was buzzing behind her? Lottie was delighted and relieved to find that her companion was the toucan. He'd been following the Zeleros down the track. It looks like we found ourselves a friend, she giggled. Maybe he'll help us out at our exhibition. I've been reading all about toucans at the Reading Helix, responded Molly. They love living at the very top of the rainforest canopy and they can fly incredibly high. Right on cue, the toucan suddenly took flight. He soared so high into the sky the group almost lost sight of him before performing somersaults and weaving through the air gracefully. He returned to the ground with a huge round of applause from the Zeleros. The Zeleros checked their computer watches for an update before continuing their journey. They were happy to find that the track's twists and turns had transformed into a simple pathway through the trees. What a perfect opportunity for seriously fast skating, commented Lottie as she prepared her to launch herself down the path. Yippee, watch me go, she yelled while zooming down the track on her speedy skates. The others laughed as she came to a abrupt halt by crashing into a huge tree blocking her path. That certainly wasn't on the tracking system. A groaning Lottie slowly lifted herself up from the ground and looked around the tree. Before the others could stop her, Lottie picked a shiny red fruit from the branch and without thinking, popped it into her mouth. No, Lottie, don't, yelled Ace. The other Zeleros ran over in panic. Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine, reassured Lottie as the other Zolaris breathlessly caught up with her and reminded her of Professor Bard's warning not to eat or drink anything from the jungle. It looks like just a delicious cherry. I'm sure it's safe, she continued. They watched as Lottie slowly turned pale. Although it didn't quite taste like one, she muttered as she slumped slowly to the floor, clutching her stomach. You look awful, gasped Isha. I feel awful, responded Lottie. My tummy is doing somersaults, just like the toucan. What are we going to do? It's okay, reassured Ace. The rainforest has hundreds of medicinal plants we could use to cure a tummy ache. We just said the right ones. I think you might have a remedy to fix this. Oscar, can you pass me your backpack? The Zolaris watched as Ace took a bottle of water and a small mixing bowl from Oscar's bag before pointing Amali in the direction of a tree in the distance and asking her to quickly collect some leaves. Oscar and Rue, can you use your tools to get me a scrap of bark off that tree and three of those small yellow flowers next to it, please? She asked. He asked. Oscar, Rue, and Amali rushed off to collect the ingredients, and upon their return, Ace slowly ground them into a paste before mixing them with the water for Lottie to take a drink. The Zolaris waited anxiously as the medicine took its course, and after a short while, Lottie rose to her feet before letting out an enormous burp. Excuse me, giggled Lottie as everyone laughed. Next time, stick to chewing your bubble gum, joked Rue. Professor Bard's face flickered up the screens of their computer watches. Nice work, Ace, he said warmly. Now, according to our satellites, you are close to Blossom Gorge, so keep your eyes peeled for the ZV. You should almost be able to smell it now. The Zolaris became aware of a faint rumbling sound at the distance. What could that be? Asked Isha. And why would someone want to disturb the rainforest animals like that? I'm worried it has something to do with the disappearing ZV, responded Ace. The Zolaris continued and were dismayed to find a raging river blocking the route. Xena's face soon popped up in their computer watches. We checked the satellites and there's no other way around the river, she explained. That means you'll have to find a way across the river yourselves. But hurry, you don't have much time. Oscar was quick about to hatch a plan. He reached into his rucksack and pulled out a huge brown rope, chopping off a section with his penknife. We can lasso this rope into that tree and use it to swing across the river, he said, pointing to a huge tree behind them. The other Zolaros stood back as Oscar made a loop in the rope before swinging it around. He launched up in the air and the Zolaros cheered in delight as it caught onto a thick tree branch and secured itself tightly. Oscar was the first to jump onto the shore and swing across the gushing river onto the shore. The rest of the Zolaros followed excitedly. Amali was the last of the Zolaros to cross the river and celebrated the victory with an elaborate somersault up the rope and onto the shore before taking a bow. Yippee! The Zolaros cheered. What's that smell? Asked Lottie pensively as the Zolaros walked. It smells like the tastiest fruity bubblegum in the world. That's it, Ace cried excitedly. That's the smell of the ZV flower that woke me up this morning. That means we must be near Blossom Gorge. Amali looked distracted. What's all that banging and crashing? She asked. The noises that the Zolaros had heard earlier were now louder and closer than ever. Come on, let's go find out what's going on, shouted Rue above the racket as he led the group forward. After several minutes, he stopped into his tracks. Look, he whispered, pointing ahead. They're chopping down the trees and clearing all the flowers. The Zolaris looked on in shock as they saw a team of diggers clearing Blossom Gorge. Instead of being filled with the luscious greenery and the most exquisite flowers, the gorge is being destroyed. Workmen chopped away the trees before loading them into huge lorries to be taken away. Next to them, a gigantic digger roared as it pulled earth from a deep hole in the ground. What was going on? The group watched in horror as the workmen tackled the last remaining trees. What kind of person would chop down the beautiful rainforest trees and ZV flowers? Cried Amali. They could also see animals scattering far and wide, just having lost their having just lost their homes. The Zaleros were too shocked to notice those two surly-looking men coming toward them. "What are you lot doing here?" they demanded to know gruffly as they approached the Zaleros. "Trespassers are not allowed," snarled the second man. The Zaleros explained why they reached the clearing by accident while looking for the ziti flower, but the guards remained unconvinced. "We'll see what the boss has to say about that," they began. "We patrolled this area to catch spies like you. You can come with us." The two men led the Zaleros across the worksite to a dirty old building where they had taken through a maze of dark, winding corridors. Finally, they reached a cramped room and hit a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Before they could take in what's happening, the guards shut them inside roughly. "What are we going to do now?" Lottie wailed as the door shut behind them with a bang. The men laughed amongst themselves as they locked the door firmly. "Well, the upside is, I think we'll find out pretty soon just who is doing this terrible thing," responded Rue. Xena soon appeared on the computer watches. The Zaleros quickly noticed, however, that her image was all distorted and fuzzy. "Sorry, we haven't been able to get here sooner. We are losing our signal with you," Xena began. "Whoever's removing the trees from Blossom Gorge is very hard to make sure they cannot be found by interfering with the satellite signal." "Do you know why someone must be ruining Blossom Gorge like this?" asked Oscar. Professor Bard appeared alongside Xena. "We're not sure," he admitted. "But we've been doing some research, and according to legend, Blossom Gorge is home to the biggest rubies in the world. It's impossible that someone is chopping down the tree to mine for jewels, which would explain why they're patrolling for spies, as they don't want to be found out," Oscar concluded. Before the Zaleros could find out more information, their computer watches flickered and lost all the signal. The professor and Xena were gone. "Well, it looks like we'll have to sort this one out by ourselves," sighed Rue. "Wait, there's someone coming," whispered Lottie as the sound of brisk high-heeled footsteps flooded the cell. They listened as the steps stopped outside at the door and a key turned in the lock. "Countess Lucille," the Zaleros gasped as the door flew open. "It's you!" "Well, who did you think it would be?" snarled the Countess in response. "So it's you disturbing all the rainforest plants and animals," declared Ace. "But why? Animals? Ha! I don't give a hoot about animals. They've never been anything but trouble for me. I can't stand the wretched things. Blossom Gorge is full of precious rubies, and soon they will all be mine. Then, of course, I'll be even more fantastically rich than I already am." The Zaleros stared at Countess Lucille in shock. "Do you know that the endangered ziti flower is disappearing thanks to your scheme?" asked Isha. "Do you know that the ziti flowers are worth an absolute fortune as they can be made into perfume?" Countess Lucille sniggered in response. "I've been collecting them to sell. I'll be able to buy all the shoes I want with these. You didn't think I'd just throw them away now, did you?" "You are so selfish, Countess Lucille. You'll never get away with it." "Of course I will," responded the Countess. "Do you know how much money I can get for these? Ah, the best wardrobe in town. Make yourselves comfortable." Countess Lucille sneered before the Zaleros had a chance to respond. "You're not going anywhere." And with that, the door slammed shut and Countess Lucille was gone. "We should have known that a scheme like this would involve Countess Lucille," sighed Molly. "Who else would destroy beautiful rainforests and the jewels and money?" The Zaleros sat and pondered their escape. Zoro rose to his feet and walked over to the window, which contained thick metal bars rather than glass. He stood on his hind legs before scratching at the bars with front paws. "I think he might be trying to tell us something," suggested Ace, sensing Zoro's frustration. "What about his GPS? Is it still working?" asked Oscar. Ace examined the tracking device on Zoro's collar. "No," he replied. "Even that isn't receiving any signal. Countess Lucille is certainly going to great efforts to make sure she isn't found." While Ace was up, he looked out the window to see what had grabbed Zoro's attention, but he couldn't pick anything out of the ordinary. The Zaleros were contemplating what Zoro was trying to tell them when a second surprise visitor interrupted them. "Shh!" instructed Isha. Can you hear that? The group stopped and listened closely to a scratching sound. It's coming from the window, Rue whispered it as their eyes followed this sound to the window as they saw the toucan, who was noisily tapping his claws against the bars for attention. It seems like everybody wants our attention today, laughed Rue. I think he's trying to show us something, said Lottie, moving towards the barred window. She was greeted by the most peculiar sight. A huge group of toucans assembled on the ground, pushing and shoving one another impatiently. Giggling gumballs! What's going on here? Exclaimed Lottie. The other Zaleros rushed over to the window to see. As they watched, the mass of toucans flew to the air, bewildering the workmen as they flew noisily overhead. The Zaleros looked on in shock as the toucans descended upon Countess Lucille as she was busily bossed up around a group of workers. They couldn't believe their eyes as the toucans picked her up by the shoulders with their claws and flew away with her. The Zaleros laughed as the army of toucans are kidnapping the screaming Countess Lucille, and they flew her across the worksite. Watching her legs wriggling with panic up in the air was almost too much for Lottie, who fell to the ground with laughter. Let go of me! The Countess screamed at the top of her voice. Where are they taking her? Asked Isha above the squawking and commotion. I think she's going to get her wish, replied Ace. Look at the murky-browed swamp over there, he said, pointing to the edge of the gorge. The Zaleros followed Ace's gaze to a huge muddy swamp, bubbling away at the back of the clearing. Before the Zaleros could catch their breath, the toucan swarmed over the group, and with a noisy flourish, released the grip on Countess Lucille. They squawked with delight as she doubled into the dirty brown swamp. The toucan was obviously looking out for us after all, gasped Ace between laughs. Who would have thought he had so many friends? Exactly, responded Lottie, still giggling. I think the toucan showed the Countess just what they think about destroying their home. From their cell, the Zaleros could hear Countess Lucille screaming frantically at the workers, who stood powerlessly while she wriggled around in the mud. Get me out of here! They heard her screech. Those wretched toucans. I'll get them. I bet this has something to do with those pesky Zaleros. The flock of toucans flew by the Zaleros' cell, and they squawked wildly. They were obviously very pleased with themselves, and the Zaleros gave them a big cheer. The Zaleros were still chuckling about the toucans when all of a sudden Ace had a thought. I know why Zoro was trying to attract our attention, he claimed, walking over to the window and touching the bars. The spaces between these bars are so tiny that only a mouse could squeeze through. We could shrink Zoro so he can escape out of the window. Once he gets inside, we'll make it grow really huge so that he can come and break the door open for us. The workmen will be so distracted by Countess Lucille screaming so that they won't even notice Zoro. Ace continued. Good work, Zoro, yelled the Zaleros. Animals are sure helping us today. Isha smiled. With little time to spare, the Zaleros watched excitedly as Ace shrunk Zoro to the size of a mouse. Zoro quickly scuttled through the bars of the windows before Ace transformed into a tiny mouse into a giant. Zoro bounded away within seconds, so the cell door flew open with an almighty kick from Zoro. The Zaleros rushed out into the corridor and greeted him with a hug. Let's hurry. Now's the time to catch the workmen off guard, said Amali, taking a huge leap into Zoro's back and nestling among his fur. The other Zaleros followed by clambering up Zoro's tail. Charge! Cried Lottie. The workmen were busy trying to hoist Countess Lucille onto the swamp with a crane when supersized Zoro came leaping towards them, followed by a flock of toucans. The men ran away cowering in fear, leaving Countess Lucille stranded in the swamp. Guards, come back! Screeched Countess Lucille. My dress is getting ruined in here. Somebody get me out! She suddenly spotted the Zaleros peeking towards Zoro's fur. I should have known this was your doing, she cried helplessly as the toucans circled around her. Ace moved on forward to Zoro's head. We'll get you out of here, if you can hand over the CV flowers for us so we can replant them. Plus, You must promise to stop the mining. We know what's going on here, and we'll tell anyone we know. You can't hide anymore. Fine! The Countess yelled back in desperation. You can have your precious flowers if it means I can get out of here. She gestured over to a workman who carried a huge linen sack bulging with ZV flowers, and he handed them up to Ace. The beautiful smell also knocked the Zolaras straight off Zora's back. All I wanted is to be rich, Countess Lucille sniffled as she flailed in the swamp. Please just get me out of here. I promise to put a stop to the mining. I'll do anything to get away from these crazy birds. On Ace's command, Zora swung his colossal tail towards where Countess Lucille was sitting in the swamp. Upon seeing the huge tail, the toucans stopped flying around the Countess and quickly retreated to the shore. Hold on to Zora's tail tight and don't let go, commanded Ace. Countess Lucille grabbed onto Zora's tail as she efficiently towed her from the bubbling swamp. Flicking her off once she reached the shore. You may have won this time, the Countess threatened breathlessly as she pulled herself from the dusty ground. But I'll be back. Believe me. The Zolaras watched as Countess Lucille stumbled back to the building. She's going to need a very long shower, laughed Isha. The Zolaras busily set about replanting the ZV flowers with help of the workmen. After that, the work was finished, the workmen took their diggers out of the Amazon, and Countess Lucille had to do some explaining to the local authorities. Just as the Zolaras were about to teleport back to Bow City, Isha remembered that they needed the ZV flower for the exhibition. This one looks perfect, said Isha as she gave it to Oscar for safekeeping. Everyone said goodbye to the toucans, and a moment later, they were back in Professor Bard's office at so much to tell. Xena and the professor were anxiously eating spaghetti when the Zolaras returned. You're safe, she cried, hugging the group. We couldn't regain signal with you. We weren't sure if you'd managed to escape from the cell. Professor Bard was delighted to receive the ZV flower for the exhibition from Oscar. The phone rang, and it was the police of the Amazon. They wanted to say thank you to the Zolaras for saving the ZV and also let them know that Countess Lucille would be having an extended vacation at their prison cells. The police were also putting the Countess through a rainforest appreciation program. The Zolaras cheered. There's something I don't understand, though, said Ace to Professor Bard. What happened to the original ZV flower? Why could I smell it from my bedroom? Well, said the professor, looking embarrassed. Xena and I examined the box and discovered a muddy paw print across the front. Zoro must have been so intrigued by the scent that he broke the lock and ate the flower. So the fragrance was coming from Zoro? I thought he smelled nice lately. Ace laughed. Q's mouth is close up.